Amazing. Well, welcome everybody to our webinar. It is being recorded and we will have some polls going on. So please feel to ask any questions in the chat, make this interactive, and we'll definitely have time for questions at the end. But yes, welcome to Scaling with Confidence, AI with Confidence. And we're really real worlding what AI means with our AI factory. We have some amazing speakers online for you. So we have a Larry Gibbon who's joining us from Microsoft. She's the small medium enterprise and channel lead for UK&I, and she'll be sharing her expertise and point of view, enabling frontier transformation. And then she'll be followed by Jody Ashwood, who's our Chief Data and AI Officer at Transparity. She'll be sharing research and background on AI transformation. And then to bring it all to life, I'll be hosting a Q&A with Reese Gavin, who is Head of Application Development and Delivery at Charles Taylor. He's leveraged our AI factory to really place his customers first, and he'll share some tips and lessons learned. I'm our Alliances Director at Transparity and really excited to be welcoming you all to this call. So a bit about us at Transparity. We're very, very proud to be a very technical organization. All of these solution area designations that you see really represent a breadth and depth across the Microsoft tech stack. We're really pleased that we just won the Partner of the Year award for nonprofit, which you'll see there on the bottom. And we also have a new designation that Larry will detail, which is very relevant to this AI topic. So we've mentioned Frontier Firm a little bit, and to help bring this to life, I'd love to introduce Larry, who'll share what she's seeing at Microsoft in terms of driving transformation across the UK and Ireland. Over to you.
Thanks, Hilary. Hey, it's a pleasure to be here and join you all today and be on this panel. As Hilary mentioned, I'm responsible for our customer-facing teams across our corporate business and our SMB, and obviously our wonderful partner ecosystem that help deliver the great outcomes our customers and stakeholders are looking for. So look, I'll kick us off by sharing what we're really seeing in the market and how we're thinking about helping customers on their AI transformation journey. For some of you that might be on the call that joined us at Ignite in November, you might have heard the new term, the Frontier Firm, and that's really how we're helping and framing how we're helping customers think about their AI transformation journey. So you know, the view here is that we see I see a poll going up. Sorry, I just came across my screen there. So you might have heard the term at Ignite. And look, for those that we see across the different sort of customers that we serve, there's just a marked difference between those that are really putting AI at the center of their operations, and those are the organizations we're calling frontier firms. And these firms look, as I said, sort of markedly different to other organizations than those that we know today. So look, just to bring it to life, you know, those organizations are really looking to scale rapidly, operate with agility and generate value faster. And those are the outcomes I'm sure many of you on the call are looking for and that we see across our customers. And they're demanding that they want support and help with from both Microsoft and the partner ecosystem, and partners like Transparity can help with this. So just moving on to the next slide, look, the context of the impact of frontier firms are seeing with AI transformation. We've developed this framework for AI transformation success, and it's really grounded on these 4 pillars that you see here that leading organizations use to drive real business outcomes. Look, firstly, it's about enriching the employee experience. It's about empowering the teams to do their best work, to do the most creative work by automating routine tasks, unlocking creativity, as I mentioned, and supporting continuous learning. And probably the most immediate example I can use is something I see daily across my teams, my own use of Copilot, whether it's using agents to you know, do my research or pull in analysts and you know, other agents to really bring in different sources of data that help me prepare for all my internal and external meetings. And again, I see that use right across my team as well. So it saves me an enormous amount of time every single day. Second pillar really talks about customer engagement, and Here, it's about the use of AI to deliver more personalised, responsive and meaningful interaction at every touch point. Probably the most powerful example we've got here, as us being customer zero, which we take seriously, is a project called Project Apollo, where we rolled out Microsoft Copilot for Service right across our support organisation, as you can imagine, an enormous part of our business. And there we saw great benefits, from having 360 view of our customers or employees, to really for quality service, a 5x increase in customer email click-through and a 66% reduction in support traffic with an AI chatbot. So, enormous benefit for a huge part of our organisation, saving lots of efficiency and time for us there. The third pillar is all about reshaping business process. This is about moving beyond the incremental improvements, really reimagining workflows and operations with AI at the core, driving efficiency and agility. And the last one is bending the curve on innovation. Look, here we want to accelerate for our customers the pace of innovation by giving every team the tool and intelligence to experiment and iterate and bring new ideas to market faster. And I see many of our customers doing so every single day. So really, this framework isn't just about theory. It's grounded on what we see across frontier firms achieving today. And the real differentiator is how organizations put these pillars into action and using AI not just as a tool, but really thinking about enterprise-wide transformation. So if we move on to the next slide, if I think about the most frequently asked questions, getting an ROI out of their AI investments is probably up there with the most frequently asked help me here topic. So look, I just wanted to share and give you some confidence really on, we've partnered with IDC for some of this research. We've also done our own research that we publish twice a year called the Work Trend Index data, where we've sampled 30,000 of our own customers. But a combination of this data really brings to life that the business case for AI is compelling. It's realizing its full value requires just moving beyond isolated pilots. That's probably our biggest learning. We see the value right across all industries, all customer sizes. As I mentioned, I kind of sit across corporate and SMB. So really seeing the breadth of the different types of customers, I can see it right across the board. So when we think about that, on average, customers are seeing a 2.3x ROI from their AI investments. So, whilst organizations we see are rapidly adopting AI, part of the challenge is really justifying that to their CFO, to the board of directors. Really, that is still a daily conversation we're having with customers. And again, partners like Transparency are well placed to help support on those exercises and help there as well. So specifically on the IDC research, frontier firms dramatically outperform laggards in the industry, and each organization is really looking at how do we become the best of our industry and kind of lead the way. So AI being a real differentiator there. So we see 88% strength in top line growth compared to 23%. 87% see stronger brand differentiation versus 21%, so quite a marked difference there. And then 86% see gains in cost efficiency versus 21%. So you can really see the difference there. And similar to the Project Apollo example I shared earlier, 85% improvement in customer experience compared to just 23%. So some real stark differences between those in their markets that are leading the way versus others that might be, sort of more of a laggard and sort of being left behind there. So the core idea here is that a frontier firm is not about deploying more AI tools or proving the value of one use case. It's really thinking about this more holistically. And it is about a cultural change and reimagining workflows and operating models, which we're all here to help with as well. So that's the concept behind the frontier firm and some of the ROI that we've seen over the past few years. So just moving to the next slide, just quickly sort of summarizing really our frontier firm approach. And it's all about scaling AI. That's the sort of theme of what I've just talked about here, in a real and repeatable way. And again, we've got these sort of three pillars in the way that we think about it. Firstly, we put AI directly in the flow of human ambition. It's about augmenting people, not replacing them. And that's a really key point to land on here. So it's about improving the outcomes. And I think, when you start seeing individuals do their best work and really come to life because they're doing the more creative work, I mean, that's just incredible to see. And that's what we're really here to help achieve. And then secondly, to drive ubiquitous innovation. We want every team to build and adapt and benefit from AI, and not just a few specialists in a particular team or simply the IT team. This is about scaling the impact right across the business. And lastly, if I come back to the most frequently asked questions and what's top of mind for CEOs and CIOs and CISOs that I talk to, it's about the importance of observability at every layer and having security at the heart of that strategy. So we want to give leaders confidence. We want to give full visibility and control and trust as AI operates right across the stack. And that could be across hybrid estates, or, you've inherited different environments that can make that difficult. So, we're here to give you that visibility, what agents exist, who's using them, what outcomes are they driving, and what systems and data, more importantly, do they have access to. They are all really important considerations that you should be thinking about. And this is sort of where our platform at Microsoft really is here to provide that value to customers. And again, that's how we are framing how we're solving and helping customers on this journey. So look, together, this is how we sort of move from experimentation to real business impact. And just before I hand to Jodie, I think just moving to the next slide, as Hilary touched on it on the top of the call. We've got a thriving partner ecosystem. I think we're 35,000 strong now. And I think it's important to make a distinction when we're in this incredible moment with AI transformation, changing the way that we work, to make a distinction between those partners that have heavily invested in both aligning to Microsoft, but also getting accredited in a way that really gives them the credibility for you as customers and stakeholders on the call today. And I just wanted to give a show of support really for the investment they've made. This webinar they're putting on to really myth bust and break down how AI can really help organization, and credit to them. So maybe to bring it to life, I know Jodie's going to step us through a whole bunch of research they've done as well. So I'll hand to you, Jodie, to take us through to the next part of the session next. And thanks to all of you for joining today.
Thanks, Hilary. Appreciate the support. And also that was the perfect level set for the content we're about to run through. So thanks everyone again for joining today and taking time, especially over your lunch period. For those of you who I haven't met before, or for those of you who have just joined the call, my name's Jodie Ashwood and I'm the Chief Data and AI Officer here at Transverity. So for the next 15 minutes or so, I'm just going to talk you through some new UK specific AI market research that we've recently released. And I'm also going to introduce you to our new AI factory offering that hopefully takes all of the kind of insights that we're going to share and really take you through a practical kind of example of how you can bring AI to life in your organization. So just a level set, what we've seen over the last 3 years is that AI has really been unavoidable. I think it's everywhere you look. And we're seeing that the momentum isn't slowing down. Over the last few years, I think there's been a lot of change in people's kind of personal habits, and we're using AI in our personal lives as consumers and as customers. And we've really started to kind of fully understand the capability. And what we've seen through leveraging AI in our personal life is that we now want to be able to take AI to work, right? And we really want to think about how we can apply that to ourselves as employees, but also how we can see the benefits of really starting to streamline and reimagine those kind of outdated business processes. So what we're seeing at a high level is the ideas and the appetite is definitely there. The momentum continues, but yet we're still seeing a disconnect between moving from that kind of curiosity with wanting to use and start to play with AI into actually being able to really action that. So we see that a lot of organizations are still experiencing challenges which with this important part of scaling AI in a really consistent and standardized way across their organization. So what we wanted to do at Transverity is to ensure that we're really serving our customers in the best possible way, and to ensure that we're kind of meeting you where you are on your journey. We wanted to understand the realistic perspective of the types of organisation that we support with where they are on their journey and where they want to get to, and kind of what's stopping them along the way. So we partnered with an organisation called YouGov to run a survey, and this was specifically targeting UK IT leaders and business decision makers. And you can see from some of the stats on the slide that we had around 500 responses, and these came from a variety of different industries and also different organisational sizes. And I'm just going to talk you through now kind of the responses that we've seen. And whilst they weren't a huge surprise, I think actually when you drill into it, you'll think, wow, this is common sense. But I think it's still been really insightful, and I hope they resonate with yourselves as well. So please do feel free to kind of drop comments in around, oh yeah, this makes sense. Oh, we haven't seen this in our organisation, because we'd love to hear kind of whether this resonates with yourself. So starting from the top, again, really clear momentum. We're seeing that AI is being prioritised at a board level, and we're seeing that it's now being noted as a line item on IT budgets. And we're actually seeing that that's up to a total of 30%. Yet we are still seeing that there is this really clear disconnect between that kind of desire and execution mode. So we're still seeing that staggering 24% are still in pilot phase, and actually 32% have managed to productionize AI in one or more departments. And actually, I've seen from the first poll that this group seem to have been doing an amazing job with AI already. And I can see that many of you have started to deploy AI across your business, and actually some are fully deployed and seeing ROI. So if people do feel comfortable, I'd love to know in the chat how many kind of departments you've productionized AI in, and what those use cases that you got started with were as well, because I think there's tons that we can kind of learn from each other in this journey as well. But in terms of that disconnect, what our research has shown is that there's really three main challenges that are present, and this is regardless of industry, budget, or your chosen kind of platform or provider. Now, what we're seeing is that AI is actually still being siloed, is still being treated quite separately to the wider business strategy, and these dots aren't kind of connected. We're seeing that there's actually a lot of uncertainty around where and how AI is actually being used within your organizations. And we're really seeing that shadow AI is kind of overtaking shadow IT is a new term. And then finally, we're seeing that there is this lack of kind of velocity from pilot to deployment. And what we're seeing is that really loops back to that disconnect between plans and actions. And what we see is it's so important to kind of get started and select that right use case to show that you can demonstrate ROI and success with AI. And when we looked at the research to see what does good look like, what is actually making the difference for those that are seeing success with their AI initiatives, again, this is perhaps unsurprising, but it's structure. It's having a holistic strategy across people, process, and technology that Aleri just spoke to earlier. It really is having that holistic plan across your organization. And the respondents showed that these are the characteristics or components that were really impactful on their AI implementation. So I'm sure it will be no surprise that, starting with your people and most importantly, really considering this as a adoption and a change management program, bringing your employees on this journey and really helping them to increase not only their digital literacy, but also their AI literacy, and actually kind of empowering them with the confidence to use these new tools that are going to help them and aid them in doing their jobs. And we've seen that this isn't kind of a one and done approach. It does really need to be reinforced over time. And we've also seen that it's important to kind of not overwhelm your employees, but to really think about taking a phased approach, starting with the foundation, starting with the basics. We've seen that employee productivity tools like Copilot are a really great way of kind of bringing people on that journey and showing them the value of AI, and that it's not going to replace their roles, but it's really going to help or augment what they're doing, has been a great way to kind of build this confidence before introducing more complex topics like agents. Next up is executive sponsorship, and typically we're seeing this as C-level sponsorship. Having that support from the top down with somebody really showing, not just telling and leading the way. Again, we've seen that this has driven a lot of confidence within the organization, and having that kind of vision statement and that purpose has been really important. Then again, ensuring that AI is an enabler for your business strategy. It's not siloed, but it's something that's going to be part of your kit bag to actually help you to go faster and to achieve those organizational goals. And then lastly, it's just as important, but we don't think it's a starting point, is the technology. Really thinking about your security and governance at the forefront, giving your internal teams that confidence around where and how AI is actually being used, but also having that strong foundation with your landing zone, your data platform, and making sure you've got this kind of scalable platform that's underpinning AI so that you can scale. Now, I just wanted to highlight kind of some of the differences that we've seen from taking a structured approach versus an unstructured approach. And I wanted to look at a few of those kind of key characteristics and challenges to really highlight the difference. So when looking at leadership buy-in, we've seen that it's really clear that executives obviously like to back plans. They don't like just experiments. And we're seeing that 88% of organizations that have this structure are seeing full kind of leadership support, and actually 58% of those are actively championing those initiatives through kind of that showing, not just telling motion, versus only 15% of organizations who, when taking an unstructured approach, it's actually even worse in not having that support, but they're seeing 38% of their leadership team are actively resistant to further development, whether that's through skepticism or just, again, not being fully aligned with that plan. Which is always going to hinder progress, as you can imagine. Next up, when looking at shadow AI, it's really clear that if you don't have a clear strategy and approach, 93% of the respondents were not confident where AI was being used across their organization, which again, they didn't then want to kind of start going out and making a difference with AI because they were spending so much time on actually, gosh, it's already got loose. How do we then kind of control that? Which is obviously a lot more difficult to do retrospectively. Whereas a whopping 95% that do have confidence when they've taken a structured approach. And we're really seeing that 68% of unstructured organizations, they can't see how AI is being used. And it's really showing that lack of foresight around things like the governance, the security, the observability that Larry mentioned earlier as well. So again, having that at the forefront and really thinking about that before you get going, not as a blocker, but really as having that guardrails for success is vital. And then finally, and probably most important for a lot of people on this call, is the ROI and the actual impact, the tangible impact. And we're seeing a real clear difference around that ROI and confidence when taking a structured approach. And I think this is so crucial as part of your business case for not only future investment and development, but having that exec buy-in and being able to have a bit more free rein in terms of what you're looking to achieve as an organization. So just to reiterate, and we feel like these stats kind of speak for themselves, really, that when taking a structured approach, it really is going to set you and your organizations up for success. And we think, having this structure is not going to slow you down, because a lot of this can be done in parallel. It's not necessarily sequential, but it does ensure that you're thinking about everything holistically, and you're not going to run into these blockers a bit further down because you've got that well thought out plan in place. And I've touched on most of these key characteristics, but just to call out two that we haven't spoken about. One is an AI policy, and I think this is really important to set the guardrails for your employees from not just a technology perspective, but really from that people and process perspective. What can they do? What can't they do? And then what is the process in terms of if they want to request access to a new tool, or they want to understand if they can use AI for a specific use case. And we found that this really instills confidence so that people feel like they can get going with it and they're not kind of going to get in trouble for doing something wrong. And then finally, the responsible and ethical guardrail. So again, it's so difficult to do this retrospectively. And AI, it needs to be ethical and inclusive by design. And there's now so much tooling in place to make this possible through services like Azure Content Safety, through the explainability kind of tools that are available. There's so much capability kind of at your available now to make sure you're leveraging AI in the right way for your organization, so you don't have to worry about that additional kind of risk. So in terms of what we think is a fantastic kind of answer for providing this holistic strategy to your organization is, I'd like to introduce you to our new offering called our AI Factory. And this has really been built with the research in mind to make sure we're giving organizations a really clear and holistic approach to AI. So as you can see from the slide, the AI Factory is made up of 3 components. And as I mentioned earlier, this is something you can do in parallel, because a lot of the time it's leveraging different personas within your organization. It's not something that needs to be sequential. And you can see that component 1 really starts with that alignment to your business objectives. We do not start with the technology solution, because ultimately AI isn't always going to be the answer. So we like to really understand what are those business pain points, what are the opportunities, and then what the potential solution could be. And we also really like to start by clearly understanding where you are on your journey, because this looks different for every organization, and this approach is truly flexible, because there's some organizations that we work with where they've already got a fully defined roadmap. Yes, they might want us to help kind of verify that, but actually they need support with how to build out these consistent, repeatable building blocks so that they're scaling AI in an efficient way. Some organizations already feel really comfortable with their foundational architecture, so they don't feel like we need to help them review their security and governance posture. So again, it's very flexible in terms of, we like to understand where you are as an organization, and then we build, that journey for how we get you to where you want to go. And you'll notice that for each of these 3 components, it starts with that kind of assessment phase, so that we're not duplicating efforts, but at the same time we're getting a really realistic understanding of who you are as an organization and where you are as an organization. So for us, we feel like things like the AI readiness assessment is really important. Likewise, just reviewing where you are from kind of a security and governance perspective. So when you look at the 3 components, component 1 is all about understanding where you are from that kind of organizational culture, operating model perspective, but then also starting to look at identifying and prioritizing those use cases to get started with. And we look at that from a feasibility perspective, but also kind of the time to value and business value perspective as well. So some use cases will then unlock other use cases. So typically we'll work with clients to build out kind of a 3-horizon plan, and a roadmap of different use cases that we can achieve taking kind of an agile sprint method. Component 2 is all about reviewing that foundational architecture, making sure you're building from steady foundations and you're not kind of on shaky ground. And that always, the output of that is kind of a recommendations and remediations report. Again, it's up to organizations what they want to move forward with, but we'll always demonstrate what we think is best practice to be able to scale AI in an efficient way. And then finally, component 3 is all around building and designing that AI platform, taking in mind responsible AI, taking into consideration those repeatable building blocks. When you look at a lot of AI use cases, the underlying technology is typically the same. So we really want to build these components in the most efficient way so that you're able to replicate them across different departments. And I just wanted to touch on one of these areas specifically. So if we're looking at the AI Centre of Excellence, I just wanted to demonstrate that we really aren't looking at this from just a technology lens, but what makes you unique as an organization, your culture, your people, your operating model, and the services you provide. And we really try and get a solid understanding of that before we dive into kind of the technology and designing that platform. So just a couple of last slides from me, why we think the AI Factory works. For us, this is, again, not just from a technology perspective, but really thinking about putting together that adoption strategy for your people, your departments and your organization as a whole, and really being able to bring your people on that journey. We have a team of business analysts, adoption and change managers that can really help support this, as well as our cross-functional technical delivery teams. I'd say speed, and hopefully Reese will talk you through this in a little bit more detail, but going from that envisioning to a proof of value rapidly. We focus on things like rapid prototyping to really delve into that go, no go decision quickly. Is this going to give us what we need? Is the capability there? Should we move forward with this use case? And then for us, it's around that enterprise scale. This isn't experimenting with a pilot. This is setting you up for success with AI across your organization. And as I mentioned, it's completely flexible, the partnership model, in terms of you may be at different points on this journey and you may need support with advisory. Where do we get started? How do we get started? It may be very much, actually, we just don't have the technical capability to be able to build these use cases. Or it might be, we've got some use cases already into production, but we haven't actually thought about the continuous kind of life cycle of those use cases. And now we really want to think about maturing our AI operations. So there's different starting points. And yeah, we're always happy to have kind of a conversation around what makes sense for you and where you are with your organization. So I'll leave you with this final slide, which is just how you can get started with our AI factory. Typically, it all starts with a conversation. So, we're more than happy to support those initial discovery calls, just to have a chat, give you more detail. I know it's been a bit of a whistle top tour today, but we can go into a lot more detail on those different components and also what it's looked like for some of the organizations we've worked with so far. But to give you a much clearer view on that, I'm going to pass you over to Hilary and Reese, who are going to talk you through the journey that we've been on with Charles Taylor.
Amazing. Thanks so much, Jody. Really appreciated that. And yeah, next up, we're kind of building on that with someone that's kind of been through this process. So to get started, Reese, could you introduce yourself and also give us a sense of where Charles Taylor are on your own AI journey?
Sure, Hilary. My name is Reese Gavin. I work for Charles Taylor InsurTech. I look after the application development and delivery. To give you some background, we provide products and applications to the insurance market, both general insurance and what's known as the London market. Most people understand it as Lloyd's of London, the insurer, not the bank, although the bank is one of our clients as well. That's who I am and what I do.
Amazing. And then where's Charles Taylor on that journey? Are you kind of finding AI popping up in day to day? And then, yeah, we are. So obviously it's used internally, but we sort of have three AI strands, if you like. We have a strand that looks at data, which is probably the application we're going to talk about a bit more in detail in a minute, that we've worked with Transparity to develop. But we have voice AI and sort of, I guess, it's AI plugins for things like WhatsApp. And now, while they're very independent in terms of AI usage, they all lead to the same point and the same outcome. It's the AI journey and how you can leverage what AI is currently good at to get you to the right place for your organizational needs. Yeah, that's spot on. And then just delving deeper maybe into that data side, what were the key business challenges or even customer pain points that kind of motivated you to explore what AI could do for them?
Okay, yeah. So with trying not to go down the insurance rabbit hole, as I said, we have a number of large UK and global insurers as our client base, and there's a specific part of insurance called delegated authority. In essence, that's where you get someone to write insurance on your behalf. And obviously you need to collect information. So that information traditionally comes in as in a spreadsheet, and I'm sure everyone on the call is familiar with spreadsheets and data collection and the fact that it's in essence a big free text field. Those spreadsheets get processed through one of our applications, but invariably there's errors in the data, there's data missing, there's a lot of rework. The business process is inefficient. So we had a look at that and we spoke with our clients. So we came up with a solution thinking about what could AI do. And this is really important. get AI to do something it's currently good at. And what AI is currently good at is analyzing data and identifying patterns and missing data and errors. So we've built a tool called Bordereau Sync. And Bordereau is just what in the insurance industry and banking is they term for these spreadsheets. That's all it really is. So what Bordereau Sync does is it ingests the spreadsheets, and at the end of the day, data's data, so it doesn't have to be insurance data, it can be any types of data. And it uses AI, one, to learn the repetition of patterns and errors and omissions, and then it creates an AI spreadsheet which has all the fixes, where AI has determined the correct information and the right information. It has a report that goes out to the human. It's very important here to stress that you do need a human. You can't just rely on AI to tell the human everything AI's found and fixed. And that has two outcomes. One, it gives organizations MI about the quality of their data, and then they can go and have conversations with their suppliers to say, hey, you keep sending us all this data, which is great, but you keep making all these same mistakes. Can you fix it at source? Or they can just sit there and go, well, AI's identified it, it's learning all the time, AI's fixing it. So when the data goes into our processing engines and ultimately into our data warehouse, we suddenly have greater confidence on that data and the quality of data. So we know we're not making business decisions on data that no one actually really knows if it's right or wrong.
Yeah, absolutely. My dad actually spent the bulk of his career as an underwriter in reinsurance. And when I mentioned bordereau files, even though he's retired, he kind of shuddered. So the idea of fixing them, but also keeping the human in the loop is really, really interesting. So you're kind of ideating around, okay, so there's these files, there's AI. Is that really what guided your decision to prioritize the bordereau as like a key pain point, or walk us through that?
Yeah, and I think it goes back to, we have a lot of clients we speak to and they say, the exec want AI. Oh, that's fantastic. Install Copilot for everyone. There you go. And I think it goes to some of the points that Jody spoke about as well, is having a structure, understanding what that meant, but also using what AI is good at. It's not going to build a teleportation machine as much as you might hope. So we knew this was a pain point for our clients, and you've also got to think about the ROI. You don't want to build a solution and then says, has anyone got a problem? You want to work with within your organization or with your clients and say, okay, what is the pain point? What drives you up the wall? Look at it. And I think it's again to Jody's point about the AI factory. Is AI the right answer? And in this case, it was. But then, what can AI do? How can it help? How can it enhance? But also, what are its limitations? And that's very important to understand that. So you need the human in the loop. So, for example, we've said currently the AI won't change any financial data, specifically insurance premiums, so on and so forth, because it doesn't have a frame of reference. And everyone's insurance policy is different, so everyone has a different premium. So you do need to understand your organization, where you specialize, and how you can apply AI to it. And I think if you do that, then the pilots become more successful. You get the buy-in, but you also take people on the journey with you. And I think that also touches on the guardrails point about what organizationally you will and will not let AI do. So, for example, one of our AI tool will email third parties if it knows that the data is wrong or it's missing, but it can't fix it. It can email and then they can interact back with an email or through a portal. But some companies, we won't let AI send emails. So the AI sends the email to a human who then forwards it. So it's kind of an AI email sent via a human. But I think that also touches on having the guardrails, make sure they're not just words on a paper, they can be implemented. Otherwise, and humans are really good at circumventing rules and policies.
Yeah, we are pretty good at that. And yeah, I loved your point about keeping the kind of secret sauce of what you all at Charles Taylor are great at as part of the solution, but then kind of letting AI enhance. And then, yeah, when you looked at the research that Jody was sharing earlier, what other elements were kind of resonating or things that you're experiencing at Charles Taylor?
I think there's a couple of points. So one, every organization's on its AI journey. And I think one of the key ones is don't focus on the technology in the first instance. There are pillars. So there's the organizational pillar, whether it's an offering to your client or whether it's how you use AI internally. What do we want it to do? Because like flippantly said, give everyone Copilot, but there is an expense to that. And what are you expecting employees to get out of? And one of the, I think everyone's probably used AI outside of work, ChatGPT, whether it's looking for a recipe or getting a recommendation, and so they have an understanding of it. And I think starting small and getting people into that mindset is really important, because it's, I don't think at this stage AI's going to, there's a big fear that AI will replace people's job. I think it would be a very courageous organization that said, oh, here's my finance department, Grok. You're still going to have humans there, but it's how they leverage AI and getting them to interact and learn with it. So how to write prompts, how to write questions. So that then that sort of takes the mystery away from it. But then you've got to look at what is my technology platform? What platforms do I want to interact with it? What's the best type of AI? Is it generative AI? Is it agentic AI? How do I do that? And then how do I put a wrapper around that to make sure that I'm keeping my employees safe, I'm keeping my organizational safe, and we don't suddenly find ourselves in hot water because AI's made a decision and no one realized it was AI that made the decision. And I think also as a vendor of technology products and AI products, generally we have to have really good AI policies and guardrails to show to our clients that this is not kind of the Wild West. Your data's secure. This is what AI will do, what it won't do. These are the checks and balances. So that sort of came through from what Jody was saying, and I think the last part is about the sort of, I think it was unstructured AI, where you get organizations, some say we're not having AI, but what they don't realize is that they've probably got 100 employees cutting and pasting an email or a PowerPoint into ChatGPT to enhance it or summarize it, and hopefully or maybe they don't understand that, if they're using the free version, that's out. It's no longer a confidential document. It's in cyberspace, and if someone asks a specific question, luckily enough, they'll get an answer from a company document, or it's learning collectively of all this could be sensitive company information. And I'm not trying to scare anyone. I think that's just the reality of where it is. And this is, people say the AI bubble may burst, and it may or may not, but it's not going away. You can't put the genie back in the bottle, as they say.
Yeah, exactly. That kind of shadow AI, as you said, people are kind of experimenting with it in their own lives. It's only natural to kind of bring, okay, well, what might this do for me to work? So how do we as organizations make sure that we have the policies, guardrails, documentation to just support them in making good decisions that leverage what's possible, but also keeping the guardrails on so that they're not exposing anything that they don't mean to or that they shouldn't. That's a really, really great point. And then kind of back to the research in terms of, was there anything that challenged your thinking or kind of felt different from what you're seeing on the ground, since you're kind of far ahead on this journey?
I think a lot of it did bring to light that the product Boardrow Sync, which is our AI product, which is out there, we're on the right track. I don't think it challenged the thinking. It sort of gave us some insights, but there was a number of points in there that sort of resonated with why we chose Boardrow Sync, why we looked at the data, what delivered value to our clients. And the big thing is ROI. Sometimes it can be very hard to measure with AI. And I think the other part was around, a lot of pilots get stuck. And it's, it can be a lot of people may have gone out there and said, oh, we've got 6 use cases, we'll build 6 use cases. They can't see the ROI, or some of them don't work. They haven't done the thinking beforehand. And we worked really closely with our clients in developing this to forming the use case, to doing, if you like, a little bit of market research that said, yes, this will make a difference to people. And we also know, data quality within Boardrow is one of the biggest pain points in the sort of the London market, Lloyd's insurance industry. So everyone that's seen the tool, demoed the tool, trialed the tool, they think it's fantastic. I caveat that by saying it is not magic. It does need to learn, and it's learning all the time. But the beauty is when you get a new spreadsheet, which may be structured slightly in a different way, it has the data content, but the structure is different. AI is very quick to learn that structure. So, the product develops and evolves sort of almost organically with our clients. So, we're finding a big uptake and, really positive feedback on it.
Yeah, I think that's really one element to hit on for folks that are listening is, the Charles Taylor team, yes, they brought transparency in and, we really enjoyed this experience, but they also brought their clients along at the same time. So I remember one of the first workshops that we did, we had one of your client directors that was there kind of as the voice of the client saying, what are they looking for? What will be really beneficial to them? And having that voice kind of ever present was really, really useful. So honestly, well done there. And I think that's a really great idea for other organizations looking at maybe client-facing AI applications. And then speaking about that kind of experience of working together as a team, what's it been like, Reese, from discovery with that first meeting that I'm referencing over onto delivery?
Well, I think the AI factory model has really helped and is a really good model to employ. One, because as Jodie said, the flexibility it has, and you can almost cherry pick. Two, to be fair, we use the Transparency as an accelerator. Obviously you're a Microsoft partner. Our software resides on Microsoft Azure and Fabric, and you had the insights and the leverage and the sort of organizational alignment with Microsoft, which works for us. We have obviously a suite of developers, but everyone starts their AI journey from a technology coding perspective, sort of roughly at the same place. And if we could have done it all ourselves, but bringing the AI factor on it gave us that acceleration. I think the big takeaway is, I remember when we had our first sort of engagement meeting, we were sitting in the meeting room and whiteboarded out the concept. We had the concept, we had the business knowledge, we had the industry knowledge, and we knew exactly what it wanted to do. So we sort of whiteboarded that out with you guys, we sketched it out, and then I think it was about 20 days later, you sort of came and said, well, here's the proof of value. And to be fair, it was the working product. Yes, it had a lot of learning to do, but it did what it said on the tin. I think that was really impressive and important, because it wasn't a long lead time, it wasn't hundreds of thousands of pounds, and we could see the vision come to life. And with the AI factory model, we had quite a close working relationship with the team. So it was that one team ethos, and you guys could pull in different skill sets when required, whether it was around infra or I'm trying to think of the actual coding of the application, and working with our team. So it wasn't what you might call a traditional supplier client partnership or model. It was everyone working together for the same outcome. And I think the thing is, you guys put your hands up and said, we're not insurance experts, and no, we didn't expect you to be, but you asked the right questions, you delved in there, and you learnt, so you could understand, technically what the application had to do, but from an industry and a business perspective, why it needed to do it and the value it was adding. And I think that was really, really helpful and helped in the acceleration.
Yeah, no, thanks so much for all the partnership. And yeah, it really has felt like this one team kind of churning together along the AI factory train tracks, I guess. And yeah, and that I would say for any organizations kind of looking to leverage the AI factory, bring your expertise, bring what makes you special, and then we can help enhance that and make sure that you're kind of doing it in the right way with the right tech, with the right solutions. So yeah, that's just such a good example. And then Reese, if you were advising another organization, speaking of our listeners, they're just starting on their AI journey perhaps, or some of them seem to be already going with the answers from the poll. But what would your kind of top piece or pieces of advice be based on your learning so far?
Start small. You don't need AI to solve £1 million problem. But look at your use case, really kick it through and say, you know, don't expect your first bit of AI is going to give you an ROI, well, say a measurable ROI. Like if you do, you know, give all your employees Copilot, have some thinking about what you'd like them to do with it, how they'd like to leverage it. You know, it'd be great if it then increased your bottom line, but you know, it brings it to life to people, and it's very much different from using it in an organization in a business sense than sort of asking ChatGPT for recommendations of a restaurant, for example. It's very different, so you need to have that business context to it. And also, if you start small with your pilot, you're less likely for it to stagnate. But the key is to find a problem within the organization or with a client that's not massive, but it's well understood, and then sit down and say, can AI either solve this or help mitigate it or reduce the pain? And I think if you can find that little nugget, then that gives everyone in the organization confident. It gives the exec can see positive progress. You know, it might not be a monetary ROI, but it will be there. But also think about all the other pillars that Jodie talks about. And do we have a policy? What governance do we need around this? What do we want AI to do, not to do? How are we going to control that? And then if we do all that, what is the metric that's going to say, yes, this has been a success? And it might just be everyone's using it, or it might be, oh, this is cut, you know, an hour out of everyone's day, so they, you know, God forbid, they can do twice as much work in 1 week, but for within the same hours. Let me cover it that way. But you know, that's the thing. You know, don't just rush in there and with the whole we've got to have AI. So that's great, but think about how you'd have it, what you want it to do, and what the benefit it will bring.
Well, that's really fantastic. I think we'll probably leave it there, Reese. Thank you so much for sharing. And at this point, you know, we've heard from Larry about kind of Microsoft, the frontier firm, what they're seeing, how they're seeing organizations succeed. We've heard from Jodie sharing our own research and kind of the solutions that we've developed at Transparity. And then Reese in terms of how working with Transparity can help you make that real. So with that, I think we'll go over to any questions from the audience. I know you guys have been participating in polls in the chat, so feel free to ask any questions. Probably easiest if you do it on the chat, but you can also raise a hand if you'd like to raise a hand and then unmute yourself. We'll call on you and get your questions answered. Just leave a few minutes for that.
We've had a couple in the Q&A, but I've responded to them.
Oh, great.
I think everyone can see the answers.
I don't know if I did see them, but yeah, maybe it was on a...
It's on a separate tab. Yeah, there was just a question around how
yeah.
ROI is being calculated. I just replied to say we do see a lot of synergies with RPA and things like time and motion studies, but typically we see that calculating ROI in the business case is really on a case-by-case basis, depending on that use case. And we do have some tooling available that we use called Shark Finesse that helps us to dive into looking at what those KPIs are from, you know, a time perspective, an accuracy perspective, a customer satisfaction, a customer experience perspective. So the tooling allows us to create quite bespoke business case, and then also it generates kind of like slide format, so it's easily presentable to your execs as well. And then the other question was around checks and measures for accuracy of data analysis by AI. From a custom AI perspective, there's a ton of tooling within Azure, within Microsoft Foundry around explainability. So again, it's making sure that kind of those guardrails and responsible AI is built in from the forefront. And again, happy to take that offline, have a follow-up call and dive into more detail around specific needs. But yes, there's a ton of tooling to support that kind of confidence and trust, and putting those tolerance levels in. So a lot of the time for, you know, especially when people have been using things like generative AI to respond to customer complaints, and there's kind of tolerance levels that are put in where, okay, if it's this question, here's our standard response, but, you know, actually flag based on specific criteria, because like Reese was saying, there is always going to be a need for that human in the loop and an escalation or a review, like a checkpoint. So again, this is all kind of possible now with the tooling to make sure you've got things like that in place and those guardrails in place.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd say on the ROI side, yeah, just two kind of learnings. One is do think about your customers' pain points and how you can support them. That's a clear way to, drive ROI through your customer base. And then secondly, also software takeout. So you could have existing costs that you're using on maybe a third-party translation tool that now maybe with Copilot you no longer need. So make sure that you're kind of hoovering up those different use cases as you go through different deployments.
I think sometimes it's not necessarily about the ROI on the first use case, but you're building capability that's going to scale across your organization, and it's the kind of building of that ROI, if that makes sense, that where you see the big bang effect. But sometimes it's also, you're building capability and you're going to see that ROI over time. So there's some different lenses to look at it from, but yeah, we're happy to support those conversations.
Yeah, amazing. Yeah, it's kind of that force multiplier effect as well.
100%, yes. But I guess if there's no more questions, we can wrap up.
We can definitely wrap up. So in terms of follow-up, someone will be in touch to discuss your next steps to adopting AI and how AI Factory can support that. And then you'll also all gain access to the AI Disconnect Research white paper so you can read it in full and really kind of dig in. We'd love to have any follow-on conversations or kind of continue this conversation with you all. As Jody said, this is all so unique to each organization where you are and what you're looking to achieve. So absolutely happy to help you on your individual organization's journey.